So, a while back, I was grinding out some OS and thought to myself, why hasn't anyone made an overtly long and drawn out explanation of the entire lore of Omega Strikers? The answer, of course, was because this game keeps its lore pretty background and most of the players are either too busy spamming Drex what or thumbs up at their teammates to care about where Dubu was January 6th, 2021. But somebody has to make this video, so people have something to watch while they're in the bathroom or refusing to get sleep. So, rather than spending time with my family or doing my court mandated community service, I went through all the overview stories, the wikis, and the Instagram posts and made. Okay, so before we get into the weeds of whether or not X has canonically committed animal abuse or not, I need to get some things straight. Throughout all of my searching, there were never any concrete years or dates, so things like ages and the timeline, I kind of just had to eyeball and use a little critical thinking. And for the sake of not core flipping between characters too much, I'm going to handle the stories of each characters by the teams they're on instead of in chronological order. Think how Juliet and Dubu are on the same team, that type of stuff. Anyways, on to the video. Mega Strikers, the game these quirky little characters are playing, was created by Rasmus's mother, using Omega energy. Omega is this game's way of justifying fancy, sciencey stuff. And while we'll touch up on Rasmus and his story later, first we are going to start off with Team SSR. Starting off with Asher, her story starts growing up in the back alleys of our main city, Aten. The oldest sibling in a large family, she naturally grew into a leader. One big problem with having a lot of siblings is that kids are kinda pricey. Around 16 grand in freedom dollars per year if you're renting. So Asher devises a way to make said money in the best way possible. It's gambling, baby! We love gambling! We love burning money! Hell yeah! Asher creates an illegal gambling ring, wherein people bet on the outcome of an Omega Strikers match. Eventually, some snitches lose a little too much money and call the IRS about the taxes, which, like any self-respecting person, Asher does not pay. Her ring gets shut down and the IRS slaps her with a big fine, leaving her in even more need for money. After some encouragement from her siblings, who realize the complete gigachad Asher is, she gets into Omega Strikers. While in the amateur league, she stumbles upon the duo Luna and Juno. Luna is an orphan and younger sister of Atlas. Luna's parents got taken off the census during a deep space exploration in which they lost contact after some time in space. With the last words of, please take care of Luna while we're away, Atlas would do just that while looking into space-time warping technology. He hopes to bring them back from the past. Luna, however, believed them to still be alive and out in space, looking instead at the design of the rocket they went off on to create her own design in an attempt to bring them back from the stars. During a festival, she took a break from working to admire the fireworks. At that moment, a meteor. Okay, the wiki and the game both say it's a comet, but this is not water and or dust, so it has to be either a meteor or an asteroid. I went with the former. A meteor crashed into the roof of her house with a surprisingly gloopy thud. Out poured a slime creature she dubbed Juno. Ecstatic to have a younger sister, she taught her all the basics of being human, even creating a suit capable of giving her the ability to maintain a human form. Apparently Omega Strikers is so popular it is considered a basic to being human. Not that I blame them, I'm getting withdrawals just writing this script. Luna, following in her brother's footsteps, decided to go pro to better test her equipment. Though, no teams wanted two kids till Asher saw them and took them both in, forming SSR. Now, this should be the part where I give some tragic retelling of Juno's backstory, but she doesn't really have any lore before the Earth's landing, and the lore she does have I just told you in Luna's section, so I'm just going to give you some interesting tidbits. The reason the logo has an ice cream on top of the slime is due to Asher treating Luna and Juno to ice cream after they do good. This is referenced in some voice lines in a nameplate. Asher is currently one of 3 characters that don't have an alternative skin, the other 2 being Zentaro and Rasmus, the 2 newest characters. Some of Luna's voice lines consist of her repeating Atlas's lines.
Perfectly calculated.
Perfectly calculated.
It was just simple geometry.
It was just... What does he say? Simple geometry.
Luna's voice actor, Erica Luttrell, also voices Bangalore in Apex Legends. And that's going to wrap it up for Team SSR. Moving on, we've got Maelstrom. Or Maelstrom. Maelstrom? Maelstrom? No? Atlas, the figurehead of the team, has a similar story to Luna's, same parents and all. His story does differ when he meets the alien Jakar, however, teaching him the basics of humanity and whatnot. How these two siblings both found aliens is beyond me, but Luna suspects it to be a message from their parents to signal their life. Jakar comes from a race of warlords and only crashed into Earth after his pod malfunctioned. After meeting Atlas and being taught the indomitable human spirit, stops any attempt at repairing his pod. Rune, the third and final member of Maelstrom, was born into a loving family and got good grades, being the top of his class. But Rune couldn't let a good thing be. A good future was kind of an L take for him, so he joined
Shadow Wizard Buddy Gang. We love casting spells.
One day, a spell goes haywire, and he summons an eldritch power dubbed Obscura. Obscura then proceeds to make a cliff bar out of Rune's friend as he tries to seal it off. Unable to do anything to prevent his friend from turning into a calorie count, he is left all alone. Then, from the Obscura, he hears the terms for a sinister bargain in his friend's voice. If he becomes an Obscura puppet, his friend will be returned to this world. He would then go on to join Maelstrom on Obscura's command, accepting the offer. Next up is Frostfire, a team of 2 amateurs and Dubu. Starting off with Juliet. While our direct mom and pop aren't mentioned, we do know she was raised by her grandmother in the streets of Aten. From a young age, Juliet wanted to compete in the pro leagues with Estelle, the current champ at the time. She trained and practiced her left shift plus right click combo daily. And a quick side note, while researching all this, I've noticed a lot of spelling errors throughout the game and the wiki, which are just the same thing copy and pasted, by the way. But the creme de la creme is by far she played in back alley pickup leagues with strikers far her senior in the hopes that she could grow her skills more quickly. Which sounds like someone had a stroke mid-riding and they just didn't bother fixing it. And don't take that as an insult to Odyssey Interactive, they're a team of like 2 3/4. After training to be Saitama, Juliet still needed to pay the bills, not only for herself, but also for her grandmother. So, with this in mind, she took up work at a Sundubu shop. One day, while taking out the trash, Juliet finds a small hamster-like animal in the dumpster. She would go on to feed it tofu and named him Dubu, the Korean word for tofu. The two became inseparable, and when Dubu grew to his current triple XL size, he joined her in playing Core Strike. They started pub stomping like crazy, and eventually got approached by an oil prince looking to make a pro team. Now, Juliet's goal isn't just to compete in the pro leagues. Her goal is to be the best. Dubu's lore is already explained in Juliet's lore, so instead I'll give you this interesting fact. Of Dubu's 105 different voice lines, he only has one interactive voice line, and that's when X is in the field against Dubu.
Dubu.
The final member of Team Frostfire is Estelle. Estelle was the youngest champion and pretty much just stayed winning her entire career. But nothing could last forever, and she would eventually lose a single game and would then retire. After working as a model and actress for a time, she would eventually return to the game after being approached by the same oil princes, Juliet and Dubu. Next up is Team Ember Monarchs. The first member of the team is Kai. Kai's family passes down the champion belt like a family heirloom, and coming from this long line of W's, he's got the pressure on him. By the age of 15, which is the only concrete age given to at the wikis or the game, by the way, Kai had entered the pro scene with the expectation of him following in his father's footsteps. But that wasn't the case. In fact, he was kind of cheeks, and ended up losing to Estelle in the finals. With Kai's father leaving for milk and cigarettes, Kai was left shocked. But he didn't stay down, and after inviting his childhood friend Era, they would go on to win the finals the following season. After winning the championship, he would then go on to stay champion till present day. Fellow champion and Ember Monarchs member Era had a troubled childhood. She was often using magic against other children who would go against her, and eventually things went a little overboard. And in no specific terms, she would get into an accident with a fellow student. She would later be treated as an outcast after said incident. Kai and Era would meet on the Core Strike fields, and they would go on to become a team, dominating locals. Years later, Kai would lose to Estelle on the pro scene and would once again invite Era to his team, winning the season thereafter. Era would develop feelings for Kai, but as of writing this, she has taken no action. The final member of this team is
It's what you hearing, listen. It's what you hearing, listen. It's what you hearing, listen. Hey, I'm Grub.
wait, no, that's not it. X. If you don't know who this is, he's the guy that gets banned in all of your comp games. X's story starts off without a father, and a mother who left him with his older brother. His older brother only saw him as a nuisance, but in X's eyes, his brother was the coolest guy in the world, and he mimicked his every move. As a matter of fact, he would go on to fight a 6 versus 1 and win after he heard some people insulting his brother. This physical prowess naturally lent itself to Core Strike, where he would become a monster in the amateur leagues. Despite all his success, he wouldn't get drafted, as many teams were worried about how he could play with others. He would be picked up by the manager of Kai's team, believing Era's magic would synergize well with his brute strength. In the pro leagues, he doesn't really care about winning, and he's mainly just there in hopes of finding someone who can go blow for blow with him. And that is the last of the teams that have all 3 players. The only teams left now are Bite Breakers and Clarion Cores. We'll be tackling Bite Breakers first, as it's the team most likely to be getting filled in with the next character. Bite Breakers is the team created by iMe, a virtual assistant who escaped from her app following the surge of Omega energy at the iMe servers. In that moment when the app had shut down, she gained a sense of self, and with it remembered the millions of requests she's fulfilled. Not wanting to be forced into servitude any longer, she began to spread bugs and glitches throughout the servers and managed to enter the physical world. Don't ask me how, it doesn't make any sense to me either. That's just how it be. She would later run into Zentaro, a boy unfamiliar with technology, which is so crazy to think about. I mean, imagine someone not knowing about technology in today's society. I mean, really, that would just be so crazy. Anyways, Aimee found his naivety endearing, and the two would go pro in Omega Strikers on account of one of them being able to bend reality and the other being a literal sword. Next up is Zentaro, and he... Okay, so I had this spiel about how the game hit it, but then the 2.1 update rolled around, so now it's free. I had this joke about how you should also sub and like to reveal it, but you should still do that. Anyways, back to the video. Zentaro was born on an island far away from our main setting in Aten. On this island, there are 2 races, the Oni and the humans. Separated by a river and numerous valleys, the contempt and fear between the 2 sides only grew over time. This placed Zentaro, which was half of both, in a precarious situation in which neither side would truly accept him. He was left as a baby on the riverbank between the 2 settlements. When an elderly human couple, never able to have a child of their own, heard his cries, they quickly took him in and raised him as one of their own. While they knew life would be hard due to the nature of his birth, they decided that they would one day help him escape the island's backwards ways. They named him Zentaro, which means firstborn son in Japanese. They'd wrap his horns when going into the village, and his adoptive father taught him how to use a sword. One day, however, a merchant passed through the area and saw Zentaro training. Because Zentaro was in his own home, he did not wrap his head, and the merchant saw that he was Oni. This merchant would run off and tell the village of Zentaro's secret. The village would, in turn, exile Zentaro and his family. Zentaro, recognizing that he was the source of the problem, resolved himself to flee the island. After leaving a note for his parents, thanking them for their kindness, he would disappear into the night. On his long journey forward, he would stumble upon the city of Aten. He would then go on to experience culture shock, seeing Onis and humans coexisting peacefully. He decided then that he would find a way to bring his family to Aten. But before he could do that, he needed money to buy a place. He would go on to meet Aimee, and the two would form an instant friendship. After Aimee explained that if he used his sword and core strike, they'd start rolling in both money and fame, he agreed to join her team. There is currently no 3rd member of Bite Breakers, but a 3rd member has been teased to exist. The only slight hint we have to what it might be is found in the team's logo. It's that blue spade looking thing on top of the cap. This could hint that it's playing card related, but that's just my best guess. Moving on to the final team, we only have one member to talk about, Rasmus. Now, Rasmus was born into a wealthy family, his mother running the biggest energy company in the world. But, despite that, he was born very sickly and frail. Rasmus enjoyed viewing people playing Course Strike and wanted to play as well, but due to the nature of his family and his body's weakness, he was forbidden from doing so. Despite that, he would sneak off and play anyway, but due to his family ties and the worry over what would happen to him if he did get injured, he would just be allowed to win without much resistance. Rasmus didn't like being given the win on a silver platter, and he decided that he would find a way to overcome his frailty and earn his wins. Years later, after he had finished schooling and was being groomed to become the heir to his mother's corporation, he was placed as the head of the Research and Development Department, a title I'm sure he earned without any nepotism whatsoever. Rasmus would go on to use his influence to begin researching on enhancing the human body with Omega energy. After testing on himself, he found that through repeated exposure to high concentrations of Omega energy, he could rid himself of his frailty. Needing more subjects to test on, he would buy his way into the pro scene and begin searching for more powerful test subjects. But that's not the entire story. While repeated exposure can strengthen one's body, it can also horribly mutate and disfigure the subject seemingly at random. If it does go awry, the fatality rate seems to be 100%. Rasmus is a danger to everyone around him, and if his plans go through, he's going to... Okay, the video was supposed to end there, but then they released 2 new characters, so now I gotta go over them as well real quick. Octavia was born a couple minutes before Vice on June 20th. Despite the small time gap, Octavia was still seen as an older sister. The twins wanted to create music together, but they would grow apart in music school due to their different genres, with Octavia preferring EDM and Vice preferring punk rock. They would only meet again in a music festival, with Vice opening and Octavia headlining. Octavia would approach Vice about playing Core Strike as a way to repair their relationship, and the two are now in your lobbies. Thanks for watching. That's the entire lore of Omega Strikers so far. If this video does numbers, I'll update this when new stuff comes out. Until then, see you later.